Maybe someday I'll be able to stop looking at action-adventure games in comparison to Souls games, but not today. I'm Sam the Ashen, and this is Wuchang Fallen Feathers. What I said before was really a half joke. There's been plenty of great Souls-likes, but even more bad or mediocre ones. Luckily for everyone that's a fan of the genre, this is an exception to the rule. I'm going to go more in depth about why the game is or isn't good, but to hear my final verdict, you're going to have to wait till the very end of the video. Just kidding. I think the game is really great, minus some performance issues, but overall it's definitely worth playing. But for the most part, I'm just a random YouTube channel to you, so maybe you should hear out my reasons why. First up, the bread and butter is the combat. The two most important things in Souls-likes to me is combat and exploration. I think of a game like Bleak Faith Forsaken, where the environments and exploration were super unique and experimental, but with the combat being below average and kinda janky, it really dragged down the whole experience. So it's important for a game to nail both of these. Wuchang's combat does a great job of making fights feel smooth, while also making attacks feel impactful. There are 5 weapon types, and all of them feel really fleshed out with their own skill trees, their movesets, special abilities. They all feel like they shined in their own areas, and even though I'm partial to the longsword, it doesn't feel overpowered. A huge core part of combat is a mechanic called Skyborn Might. This is a resource that you get from doing parries or combos or well-timed dodges. This is a resource that can be used to do special abilities or to use magic. Usually in most Souls games, there is a fixed amount of mana to use for spells or weapon abilities, and you have to rest at a bonfire to get more. But Wuchang, the resource is renewable as you play. I really like this design choice. It makes magic and abilities a much more central part of the combat instead of being a background thing that you can only do a couple of times. Most of the abilities and spells also feel overall really well balanced, whether it's a high might cost or a really slow cast time or enemy resistance. The game does a great job of making you engage with the combat, whether you're doing magic or melee or better. There's also a mechanic called Swift Draw that switches to your secondary weapon by using a special attack. It's definitely not a copy or really the same thing, but it reminded me a lot of trick weapons from Bloodborne. Pretty much every Souls game has had multiple weapon slots, but I've never seen any have a transition between those weapons like Wuchang has. The hitboxes overall feel good, and even though the game does have some performance issues, it definitely feels most noticeable during exploration and not combat, which is good. No one wants to lose a fight because the game glitched. The second pillar of a good Souls-like, for me at least, is exploration. And exploration is a huge part of Wuchang. The game overall is pretty non-linear, which isn't always a good thing. Part of this is subjective, but discovering a whole new area and multiple branching paths felt great, and a big part of that is how fun it is to fight enemies along the way, and how beautiful the environment is to look at. I played the game in performance mode on PS5, and besides some minor stuttering while exploring areas, the game ran okay. I would say it probably varies a lot more on PC, but at least for PlayStation, it should be easy to forgive. On top of that, the developers know it's a problem and have said that they're working on fixing it. This is a brand new studio, so I have no reason not to believe that they'll do everything they can to fix it. Now, back to the exploration, we have the classic trope of shortcuts and elevators, and door doesn't open from this side, which I never really minded when games took this aspect from Dark Souls. In fact, I really enjoy it if it's done well. Sometimes you get a shortcut and it feels kind of useless because you're done with the area, and why would you want to go re-explore an area that you're already done with? I've seen some games do that, but Wuchang does a good job of spacing out the shortcuts to make the levels feel like a challenge and to build tension and atmosphere, but also give you a well-timed reprieve and make the unlocking of a shortcut actually feel rewarding and useful, which is admittedly hard to pull off. One key thing that I feel exploration needs is a good incentive to go off the beaten path, which you are constantly rewarded for in this game. There's always some item or chest or secret or mini-boss or shortcut or something to reward you for venturing into the unknown. You could say that each area or level lingers just a little bit too long. I wouldn't say this, but I could see the argument for it. Overall, I think they timed it well. Just before you're getting tired of an area, it usually progresses to a new area with a new environment with new enemies and challenges to face. The atmosphere that this world creates through its really beautiful graphics and the theme of desperate bandits and half-transformed monsters and terrified villagers locked up in their house, it's really compelling, and it adds so much to the exploration and the combat. Having a really good attention to detail just adds a lot more to the game, from the lashing sword segmenting back and forth, to the centipede headpiece having pincers that move like it's alive, to the tip of your sword leaving a trail in the snow. The small details are everywhere. This game has a lot of horror elements, which you wouldn't necessarily see right at the start of the game with it being in a green lush area, but you soon see the dark underbelly of the dying region that is taking place in. When I went from a peaceful, beautiful temple to a grimy flesh pit underneath, I was genuinely surprised and uneasy at the sight of these creatures and environments, and it was a really awesome experience. Part of the overall world building here is NPCs. I'm not going to say that the characters will win any awards, but they do a good enough job on voice acting for the main ones, and they have enough personality that I remembered most of them. The main merchant that sells you boss armor, when you give him the corresponding key item, he also gives you a brief backstory on the boss or related people, and I found it fairly interesting. It added some more lore and world building. Speaking of boss armor, another strength this game has is a good balance of gear. There isn't gear overload like there is in Nioh 2, but there isn't a lack of variety like in Wuchang. The different armor looks really different visually and adds a lot of cool options for Fashion Souls. I wouldn't have minded some set bonuses or something, but it's nice to mix and match your own outfits, and it allows you to come up with some pretty cool options without suffering any penalties. As far as weapons go, there's usually 2 abilities on each weapon, with one of them being fixed and one of them being interchangeable. I really like this system because it gives you a reason to try out other weapons, while also letting you partially customize how you use each weapon. For example, the gunpowder spear shoots out projectiles for its ability, while the steamwork spear will break apart and swing around, but both of them can use aerial bulwark. Even different longswords can vary. For example, your starting longsword and the lashing whip longsword. The lashing whip segments out and has more range on its attack while having slightly lower base attack. The longsword and the halberd definitely feel the best to me, and while I would say it's subjective, I still think that the other weapons could use a little bit of love, but I'm sure there are some fans of the other weapons too. All of these weapons have their own skill trees and different abilities that can be unlocked, like the parry ability for the longsword, or clash for the dual blades that lets you poise through attacks and reduce most of the damage. There's also a bunch of generic upgrades in the skill tree like +1 vitality or strength or agility, but the abilities and meaningful passive unlocks were close enough together that I didn't really mind. The currency is similar to any other Souls game. You get currency for defeating enemies and spend that currency to level up or buy items. There's also key items that you find throughout the world that let you upgrade your healing capacity or upgrade your weapons, but instead of upgrading each weapon individually, you upgrade entire weapon types. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. The good thing is you can switch between weapons that are the same type freely without losing any of your upgrades, but the downside is it makes it feel less important when you decide what to spend your upgrade materials on. But that's definitely subjective. I would say most people will probably like this mechanic. I mentioned before that the enemies are really fun to fight. There are some repeat enemies that you see throughout the game, but there's also a ton of variety that you get to see very early on. There's always new enemies with each zone that are so different from the last, with special attacks or ailments to look out for, and the enemy designs just look really good. This heightens the combat even more when you're going up against a well-designed enemy with varied attacks. The new enemies you see in each zone are also usually designed to fit the theme of the area. There are bandits all throughout the world, but there are also half-mutated miners in the caves, and disgusting bugs in the flesh pits, skilled monks in the temples, and overall the enemy variety always felt really good. Probably the weakest aspect overall is the story. It's not weak because of the content, it's just that it's not really at the forefront. There is a story going on about your character and her sister and a few other characters intertwined. I wasn't super invested, but I also did find that the characters were charming and interesting, and I didn't always just skip right through the dialogue, which for me is pretty rare. Sometimes an interesting character made me want to hear what they had to say. I genuinely thought that when this game was first revealed that it was just trying to jump on the bandwagon of Chinese mythology Souls-likes, but I'm happy to say that I was wrong. It's obvious that this game was made with a lot of love and depth and forethought and attention to detail, and besides the game needing some optimization, the overall experience is great. If you're a fan of Souls-likes, I highly recommend this game. Unless you're on PC and you have a lower end PC, you might want to wait until the game gets further optimized. Otherwise, this is a great game. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leaving a like really does help me out a lot. If you have any thoughts, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you want to see more from me, subscribe. I post once every other week on Sunday, so I'll never clog up your feed. I hope you have a good one. Peace out.